Hello and welcome to the Hoop Troop podcast. I am Matt O'Connor, and joining me as he does on all of our shows is my cousin Luke Drobner.
What's up, guys?
And we are back with some more offseason action. Not much has happened. Slow week. Well, I shouldn't say not much has happened. I feel like it is still pretty significant. But we had the end of Summer League. We had a slight resolution to the Deandre Ayton saga. And then some serious drama come out with a little Donovan Mitchell. And not so much a trade request as just like trade rumors. The Jazz are shopping them around. So some action, nothing too concrete, but still plenty for us to talk about. So Luke, I want to start with the Deandre Ayton news. I feel like this time last week, it was in the air. He was going to sign an offer sheet with the Pacers. It wasn't official yet, but it has since happened. What are your takeaways from him signing that? The Suns obviously matching and not doing it, opting for a sign and trade. And then the potential fallout that comes from that.
Well, it's really interesting because obviously the Suns were rumored to be one of the teams in the race for Kevin Durant. And essentially I guess they had ignored Deandre Ayton in some type of way to say like, hey, we're trying to get Kevin Durant and there could be a possible sign and trade. So we don't want to commit to anything yet. And then he ended up just being like, fuck it, signing an offer sheet from the Pacers. And then the Suns being like, okay, well, let's just match it. Which I think the way the Suns handled this was like in a very team first type of way. Obviously from the ownership down, you kind of get a bad taste in your mouth, kind of like when Gordon Hayward was a restricted free agent with the Jazz. And he was like, yeah, I'm stuck here for another 4 years. And then immediately left to go to Boston.
Right.
And so you kind of see the same thing playing out here with Ayton. The Suns mishandling the situation a little bit. I really thought that they were going to end up trading him a sign and trade because it's like, here you are already. You've kind of shot yourself in the foot with Ayton wanting to be around. So trade him for something and start anew. But
Yeah.
I guess if you really think about it, like how much longer does Chris Paul have left before he's
he
no
has
longer
one more year on his contract with the Suns. So like, who knows how long after that he stays there?
Even if he stays, how good is he going to be? Is he still effective? Is he still the same defender, scorer, passer, things like that we need to compete, especially if Devin Booker isn't going to become a top 10 player in the league, which at this point, I'm unsure if it's going to happen.
He's still plenty young, but you're right. We haven't seen that improvement as a playmaker yet. He's obviously he's gotten more efficient in his own right, but yes, we're lacking that extra level, like superstar facilitation. Like even if he was just averaging, like, I feel like as a guard, if he could get up to like 7 assists or so, something like that, 6 or 7, like he would truly be in position to be a top 10 player with his scoring ability, but he hasn't shown that increase.
Is he a wing or is he a guard?
I look at him as like a true 2.
I mean, 3-time All-Star. He's been averaging 26, 27 points during these last 3 years. It's not that he's bad. I just don't think he's the number one option on a championship winning team. I almost relate him to like a Bradley Beal, which is great, right? Like if he wants to be in Phoenix on very okay teams, he's going to make a lot of money. But if he wants to win a championship, there has to be some type of sacrifice here. Yeah. Especially he's coming up. You say he's not too old yet. He's 26. So here he is. He's entering his prime. Right here, right now, he should be a top 10 player in the league, or at least arguable for it.
You would hope.
I just don't see it.
I mean, he's clearly getting there. Like, I think we've seen the steady improvement. I think having Chris Paul next to him is helpful. I think I think it's less so much an issue with Devin Booker on that team you mentioned it. It's Chris Paul aging, and also he's making a ton of money right now. Like, you're not going to want to pay an aging Chris Paul like that. He's going to have to, if he wants to win in Phoenix or elsewhere, honestly, Chris Paul in his next contract is going to have to take a pay cut. He's going to have to do what Harden just did. And
he's going to have to do more than what Harden did. I still feel that Harden is a far better scorer playmaker than Chris Paul is at this current moment.
Absolutely.
And I think that has to do a little bit with age, right? I think James Harden's 32, 33. Chris Paul's 37.
Right. Exactly. No, and I think that's absolutely in mind. But I think right now, Chris Paul making well over 30 plus million. I don't know that you want to be paying him that much, especially as he ages on that next contract. So
if he wants a ring, he's going to.
And I think
be
for
like
the
8 million.
Suns too, now that you are getting more capped out, Booker is signing that bigger extension. You have Ayton signing that. At some point, Bridges is going to ask for a lot more money. All of them
And
are going to start
Johnson's
getting
going to get paid.
more. Right. So they're all of their salaries are going to increase. It's going to be harder to keep that core together. If it involves Chris Paul, it's on his shoulders to kind of take that pay cut and say, hey, I want to win here. This is how we're going to do it. But I think the Ayton piece of that is very fascinating because you mentioned not doing a sign and trade, which I give them credit for because they were going to ultimately go from one uncertainty in paying Ayton and what that might entail to another. Say they traded for Miles Turner, who next offseason is an unrestricted free agent. You're going to have to deal with this again anyway. So I get signing Ayton to a max. I think you were right. Their front office played it as a very team-first approach, but they're like, hey, we don't necessarily think you're worth a max, but if you can go out and get one, we'll match it, which is fair. But like you mentioned the exact parallel I was thinking with Gordon Hayward, like that doesn't go over well with players. When you do that, you want to show some loyalty, but now it's super fascinating. So it might take them out of the running for Kevin Durant, at least temporarily, because Ayton can't get traded until January 15th. And in that same regard, he, one, cannot get traded to the Pacers for a full calendar year. And two, he has the power of veto now on trades. He has to get traded. They can only trade him with his consent. So if it's a deal he doesn't like, sorry, like it's not happening. So it absolutely complicates the Kevin Durant thing for them, which I think flows right into what we were talking about how like their window might be closing. Like it is an ugly,
it is closing.
Ugly...
It's closing very quickly. This upcoming year, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 expiring contracts. I mean, Jay Crowder is expiring. Dario Saric, who missed last year with the torn ACL, is expiring. Cameron Johnson's on his last year of his rookie contract. Torrey Craig's expiring. Bismack Biyama's expiring. They have guys on this roster. Mikal Bridges, I guess, signed an extension at some point, but he's making $20 million this upcoming. He must have signed it last year. He signed a 4-year, $90 million extension, which he's getting paid at starting this upcoming season, right? So 20 mil, 21, 23, 24. Devin Booker's not under contract for a long, long time. And Chris Paul is under contract until 24, 25, but it's not guaranteed. And the year before that's only partially guaranteed. So again, like the Suns want to cut him. It's, cap is pretty easy to
do that. How do you cut Chris Paul? And I understand at that price tag you might, but
if his production really dips,
is he not the best point guard option you're going to have?
He might.
I think he's a perfect complement to Devin Booker and the rest of those guys. Like we've mentioned how Booker does not have that playmaking ability that really differentiates superstars. So having a guy like Chris Paul next to him is perfect.
And Chris Paul brings a winning mentality. You see it everywhere he goes. His teams instantly get better because he's a great point guard. He understands how to motivate his teammates. He throws good passes. But like if I'm paying Chris Paul $30 million and I'm paying DeAndre Ayton 26 and I'm paying Devin Booker 40, that doesn't leave a whole lot of other room. Right. That's what I mean. If Devin Booker's not a top 10 player in the league, it's just not a roster that's going to work. The best chance they had was when they went to the finals and lost to the Bucks. I think that was the peak of their window. We see it in the playoffs this year when they absolutely got smacked by the Mavericks in a game 7. If you're the best team in the West and you had a good first round series, I understand maybe, fighting through some injuries or something like that. But I mean, you're supposed to come out here and be ready for a huge game 7. You knew Luka Doncic and the Mavs were not just going to give up.
Right.
And they looked so flat. They went down early.
Yeah.
They, was never able to build a comeback. That's what I mean. You see that meme all the time now. It's like Chris Paul hits a huge 3 to cut the lead down to 42, right? Like,
right.
It's a bad situation. If I'm Devin Booker, I'm quietly trying to figure out my way out because I don't think DeAndre, let's say if I continue to want to compete here in Phoenix, I don't think DeAndre Ayton's coming back after this contract. As soon as he's unrestricted, he's going to go wherever he wants.
Oh, I don't think
it's not going to be Phoenix.
I don't think he's finishing this contract as a Phoenix Sun. I think he's getting out of there. And I think they are motivated to do so as well. I think they don't value him as much as other teams in the league do. And I think that's very obvious. Look at what the Pacers just did. I think other teams value him. Right. So I do think they'll ultimately move him and they have access to all of their picks. I think that ultimately they will make more moves to try and win and kind of guide their future a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's very complicated now. Like they don't really have the flexibility at this point to make one of those major moves. So I think they're kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit, which is fine. And I think that is okay when you do have a great center in DeAndre Ayton. Like, it's not like it's a negative bringing him back. The only harm is that he realistically does not want to be there, which could have adverse effects to your locker room. But beyond that,
some of the
he will be gone at some point.
Some of the other rumors about DeAndre Ayton is that he has personality issues. And when we talk about personality issues, it's not like he's crazy or anything like that. I think he just lacks motivation at times. I think that was like one of the biggest critiques he's had his whole career. And here I am, Phoenix Suns organization, who I'm not like encouraging him. I'm not showing him that we really, really want him. I'm kind of saying to him, like, yeah, it's nice to have you here and we want to have you here, but on the cheapest price tag we want, which isn't necessarily the mindset you want to be giving your players who lack motivation when you're trying to win a championship.
But I think that's like a chicken or the egg situation. Like, what is causing the lack of motivation? Like, is he not motivated because they're not showing any real prioritization of his career, or is it the other way around? They're not prioritizing him because he's not motivated. So I do think they feed off each other a bit, and it has led to this very negative, just the negative situation in that organization.
Sure.
So I don't know, and like I obviously I think it's like the Spider-Man meme of them pointing at each other, basically being like, "No, it's you. No, it's you." Like, I don't know. Like, right. I really don't know definitively what's causing it, but I don't blame Ayton for being like, I'm a number one overall pick. Like, I could be more than you're letting me be, and I get that he's frustrated and wanted out, and I really do actually think that Indiana would have been a great situation for him. Like, I think it would have been a great spot for him to expand his game alongside Tyrese Halliburton with really no repercussions if you falter. So I actually think it would have been a pretty good spot.
I think the Pacers are one of those teams that are trying to be bad, especially with the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes coming up. My biggest concern with Ayton being in Indiana was the fact that Turner would still be there. Right. You know, here there are rumors. I'm sure if you're the Phoenix Suns organization and you're trying to stay in contact with Ayton, he should be telling you, oh, well, the Pacers have come to me and we've been talking. That would have been the moment for me as the Phoenix Suns organization, front office, whatever you want to say, to reach out to the Indiana Pacers and say, like, hey, look, we understand you're interested in DeAndre Ayton. He's a great kid. We love having him here, but obviously we don't want to have to pay the full price tag that you guys want to pay him. You know, how about we figure out a sign and trade here? And there are pieces on the Indiana Pacers that would have made sense for the Phoenix Suns, and they decided not to, make it happen. So, again, I really think the Suns messed up not finding a way to move him and get value back.
That's the other thing is I still think, and it's largely because they have so much cap space left. Like, the Pacers are realistically still a destination for DeAndre Ayton at some point, but the problem is now they can't trade him there for a full year. So that really just reinforces problems, because how many teams are realistically in a position to absorb a max contract without necessarily giving up significant assets in return, financial assets in that regard? So, like,
you talked about the Suns thinking about trading for Kevin Durant. You do something like that, right? DeAndre Ayton is the cornerstone piece in a Kevin Durant trade. That's just
except the Nets don't want him, so they would have needed that third team. The Pacers were perfect. Maybe the Spurs the Spurs are another team with that extra space. They don't necessarily have that like groundbreaking center on their team, but and like they just signed Keldon Johnson to a 4-year, $80 million extension. Like, they do have pieces in place that realistically fit that Ayton timeline, but I still don't love that fit. I mean, maybe at the end of this season, if they get Victor or something like that, it would be a good compliment. But there's way too much uncertainty with the Spurs. I feel like the Pacers were the prime target to facilitate maybe a multi-team trade involving DeAndre Ayton and Kevin Durant, but it's kind of out the window for now. Especially, I mean, and I guess this does kind of flow into the next conversation I wanted to have. Like, I think the Nets are just going to bring him back. Like, it sounds like this is like a now either a trade deadline or next offseason issue.
I think there's a huge asking price on some of these stars, and I understand that there are, like, obviously you're going to get a lot for Kevin Durant. You should get a lot for Kyrie Irving. And we've seen that in the past when people like Anthony Davis get traded and Paul George gets traded. And Russell Westbrook gets traded and things like that, right? We see these huge, returns for some of these all-star players, all NBA players, and you're going to get a lot for Kevin Durant, especially because he is an MVP candidate. But I feel like the asking price might be just so ridiculous. I think we see rumors all the time. It's like they're asking for like 2 all-stars, 8 picks. Like you're not going to like,
And that's
there's a difference. There's a difference between Paul George, who has destination set, isn't really a problem off the court.
Right.
Whereas like Kevin Durant's going to be a fucking circus, and so is Kyrie Irving.
But that's something that I want to piggyback, because I think you're entirely right. For whatever reason, the asking prices in the NBA have shifted a bit. I feel like normally for star players, you've been able to facilitate trades just one-on-one. Kevin Durant, very different story. No one of his caliber with this much time left on a contract has been traded. So I understand that there is like a little gray area between what we're asking for, what teams are willing to give up.
Yeah, but how much does that time on the contract left mean, right? Here he is. He has 4 years left in Brooklyn, and he's like, I want out. Right. What's to say Kevin Durant in 2 years and 1 year says, I want out, and I have to trade him again, right? Like we don't players aren't allowing their contracts to expire before they say, I want out.
Yeah. And so I think that's part of it. And that's why teams are not willing to meet the demands of the trading team. It's because there is that uncertainty now. And I think that's something we've talked about that needs to get addressed in the next CBA, and they'll find a way to do that. Adam Silver seems pretty unhappy with what's going on right now. But I think right now the trade market is really fascinating, because you're seeing it with Kevin Durant, and I want to get into this in more detail. So I'm going to say it in passing, and then we'll get into it a little bit later. That we're seeing it with Donovan Mitchell right now. And I think it has in large part to do with other teams making mistakes in trades. You look at what the Timberwolves just gave up to get Rudy Gobert, and it shifted the market. I don't think the Nets would have been as firm in their demands if that trade hadn't happened. And so now I think you have both teams, the Nets and the Jazz, being like, that's what we got for Rudy Gobert. You better shell out everything to get these other guys. And so it's very hard to meet these demands because they are ludicrous, honestly.
But we see that, okay, so here's Danny Ainge sitting in Utah. He's going to highball you, right? It's a negotiation. He's going to start the negotiations high. And I think the Timberwolves were like, I guess that's just the price, and accepted that and traded what they asked for, when really it should have been a long ongoing negotiation. I feel, as a buyer, you have to be able to walk away from too steep a price, right? If a team looking to get rid of Rudy Gobert asks for a ridiculous package, a ridiculous return, you should just be like, I don't think we can give that up.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. I think there's a disparity in leverage and like a misconception of who is actually in the driver's seat in these negotiations. Like the Nets, sure, they're saying, you know what, we're comfortable bringing everyone back.
Sure.
That's not like definitively going to work out for you at all. Have we heard from Kevin Durant say, hey, you know what, I will still play? I don't think he's going to Ben Simmons it and not play, but we don't know that for sure. Do we know Kyrie is not going to just like walk off and disappear? Like, we don't know so much about the situation. So it's like they're putting out this image of saying, you know what, we're fine with it. If we don't get our demands met, we're going to bring them back. And like, sure, you have to say that to a degree, but like, is it true? Is that actually true that you are willing to do that? Because the years before were such a shit show. How can you justify that? How can other teams not look at their situation and say, I'm calling your bluff on that. I don't buy it.
Yeah, I think everybody should be cautious. Like I said, when you're the buyer or the seller, you should be cautious of the other person and what they're asking for you. Obviously, if you're trying to buy something, you want to buy it for the lowest price possible. And if you're selling something, you want to sell it for the highest price possible. And through negotiations, you come to meet somewhere in between. And I don't think that's happening right now. I think we've set a price. And if you don't like that price, then see you later. Right? The Jazz, what are the Jazz supposed to do if they can't retool? Be decent, get stuck in no man's land. If I'm the Timberwolves, I'm like, all right, good luck drafting in the middle of the first round. I wouldn't have bought it. I think giving up I'm looking at the trade right now. Malik Beasley, Pat Bev, Leonardo Bomero, who was a rookie, Walker Kessler, who they just drafted, Jared Vanderbilt, who was a huge part of their rotation and their defensive success. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, five first round picks and some trade exceptions. It's such a ridiculous price for someone who has kind of had problems in the playoffs, and then along with that, like, you already have a center on your roster. Why are you giving all that up?
Right. And so I think it is. It's intriguing, and especially now, and I guess I'll use this to pivot into looking at the Donovan Mitchell trade situation, because they played in trading Gobert, they kind of played their cards. Because they might say, yeah, we want to retool around Donovan Mitchell, whatever. If they start the season with him on the roster and realistically end up trading him, that's a mistake on their part. You're winning more games than you have to. You are. He will win you extra games that you realistically, if your plan is to rebuild through the draft, it's not smart. So
if I'm Donovan Mitchell, I'm going out there and I'm trying to win a scoring title.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, he is right. He only has himself to play for at that point. He's going to be unhappy, and ultimately they are going to trade him. By trading Gobert and signaling that everyone else in the roster is up for grabs, they are committing to a rebuild. They cannot start the season with him, which means they have lost. They can say, all right, fine, we're going to back up. We're not going to trade him to you yet. But, like, the clock's ticking. They cannot start the season with Mitchell on the roster. So whether it is, the Knicks who have that giant trade package available, or someone else who comes in with something else, like, realistically, they have to move him. Like, they don't have as much leverage in this situation as they think they do, especially now that they traded Gobert.
Again, I think it's important for the Knicks to say, like, good. Like, I hope you find success building around Donovan Mitchell and, drafting guys at 15, 16, 17.
Right. And so
you're not gonna be a successful franchise. You're the one who has to move him so you can move forward with your organization. And it started with, we talk about them trading just Gobert, but they traded everybody. They traded O'Neal. They let people walk in free agency.
Right.
Windhorst did the, like, why is that? And that's when it kind of started when, so,
but that's why. So I look at currently what is on the table for Donovan Mitchell. And the truth of the matter is, like, that they want picks. That is realistically their goal, is to accumulate as many picks as possible, maybe like young players, but like picks is the goal. And so who has the most?
You want to draft guys that you can develop. I think we talked about it a little bit with maybe it was like the Nets or someone like that trying to trade for pieces that other people want to develop. I think it was Warriors and Nets. And you were like, oh, well, you could trade for Wiseman and Kuminga. But I'm like, but the Nets didn't draft those guys, right? The Nets want to draft somebody and build them into the Nets system, rather than saying, like, here's someone who got drafted into the Warriors system and knows how to play Warriors basketball. And then we have to unlearn how to play Warriors basketball, and we have to learn how to play Nets basketball, right? So the Jazz want picks, obviously, and other young players who haven't really developed their skill set. And the Knicks offered that. I think with the Jazz wanted from the Knicks was way too much.
The thing
I don't remember the exact package.
Yeah, so the Knicks have 8 possible picks they can trade, 4 of their own, and then 4 protected picks from various teams at various years. I won't get into, like, the nitty gritty of them just because it's a little iffy. But they can, on paper, offer the most picks out of any team right now, any interested team. I don't think the Thunder are interested. I don't think the Pelicans are interested, just for fit reasons. It sounds like that probably is not happening. The only other team that has shown significant interest is the Miami Heat, who realistically
don't have enough to
they
offer.
Have currently 2 of their own. They could pay the Thunder to get the third one, like, unprotected, but that would come at a cost. So they would have to make a move to even just have 3 picks. Then on top of that, what players are you sending? Sounds like Tyler Hero is the most intriguing one, but
again,
like,
it's
why did the
another
Jazz
one
want
where
him?
right? It's another one where we can acquire Tyler Hero, but then we have to teach him not to play Heat basketball, and then we have to teach him how to play Jazz basketball.
And so, like, realistically too, you're going to match salaries with Duncan Robinson, which is an ugly contract. But the Jazz, if you're tanking, that's fine. You can bring that in. It's the same way the Knicks would have to trade Fournier. But I still think, like, there is no package that he can offer that even remotely compares to what the Knicks can offer with their combination of young players in Grimes, McBride. I mean, I personally don't think they should trade Emmanuel Quickley or Obi Toppin, but they're available. Like, I just think there's way too much out there that the Knicks can send that way. But at the same time, the Knicks need to look at this and say, all right, the Jazz want all 8 picks and all of the players in an ideal world. Let's even bring that lower. They want 6 picks and 2 of the young players. That is exponentially larger than anything the Heat can send. Why would we trade that? The Knicks B offer is better than what the Heat can send.
It's also what did OKC get for Paul George? It was like 5 picks, SGA, who wasn't the all-star he was at the time. He was good, but not an all-star level player. I think if you keep the package realistic, right? Like it should be like 2 young players, 1 young player, and some salary matching. And
but here's the thing: I think that
Donovan Mitchell is not even as close to as good as Paul George. I just want to say that.
And in that trade, you were getting Paul George to also get Kawhi. So you were willing to give up more. So like you had Kawhi. So like
when the Lakers traded for AD, it was
right. There's still that inequity there where the Thunder in that situation were like, yeah, we have leverage because you desperately need Paul George to get Kawhi. Sure. So we want even more. So that's how I look at this, where I'm saying like there isn't quite that contingency of the Jazz can be like, no, we're not gonna they don't have that same leverage of saying, oh, like you need this badly. The Knicks don't have to do this.
Nobody has to do anything they don't want to.
Right.
I really think that
in that situation, the Clippers had to get Kawhi. You move heaven and earth to get Kawhi Leonard and pair him with Paul George. I would have traded more than they traded, frankly.
I think a lot of people will take. I want to look at like past trades, and you think about the Toronto Raptors trading for Kawhi Leonard. They had an established roster, and basically what they did, they traded their cornerstone for a slightly better cornerstone. They make a trade that they knew was going to work. They were like, wow, we're either going to be as good as we were last year, or we're going to be better. When I see trades like Rudy Gobert to the Timberwolves, they're taking a shot at an experiment, and they're sending away their future as well. And they're kind of screwing each other. You think about like the Nets, they're like, we're going to take a shot at Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and they screwed themselves, right? So again, I think if you're the buyer, you have to say, what is the return value? Are we just as good as we were last year? Is this going to screw us in 3 years, 4 years, right? Like if your current window is 1-2 years, it makes sense to send all your draft picks to grab somebody. When the Lakers traded for Anthony Davis and they sent away literally every young player and every pick they had, it made sense because they were trying to win right here, right now with LeBron. They had 2-3 years with LeBron, and they were like, this is it. Like we don't need these picks in 5 years because we're trying to win a championship right now. And so I really think that a lot of teams will cash in for right now, especially because like if you look at the Timberwolves and what they had, if they had just waited 2 or 3 years, they would probably be in the same place that they hadn't traded for Rudy Gobert. Anthony Edwards is on the rise. Karl-Anthony Towns is starting to find his role next to Edwards, and people don't necessarily like D'Angelo Russell, but maybe you bring him back on a more friendly contract. Like they had a good roster. There was no reason to trade for Gobert. You had other young players on that roster who, made sense.
Especially at the price. And so I think your point also really applies to the Knicks as well, of like, they are not trying to win right now by trading for Donovan Mitchell. It is a step in the right direction for them where you get Mitchell, RJ Barrett continues to improve, other pieces on the roster continue to improve. They're young and good. Yeah. Then you get that extra star who comes in, and that's when you're competing. So it's more like you were trading to make yourself more appealing. And it would be immediately by having him and improved RJ and everything. It would, and Jalen Brunson, like that team would be way more appealing to a star on paper. But you're trading to then win in 2 or 3 years. So like, it's hard to
another issue I have with the Knicks making this move is you trade for Mitchell. Now you have Brunson, who you promised a significant role in offense. You have Julius Randle, who already has a significant role in offense. And then Donovan Mitchell comes in and you have to give him a significant role in offense because he's better than everybody else on your roster.
So what
happens to RJ?
Right. So here's how I look at that. One, Julius Randle can kick rocks. The dude can stand in the corner. I do not give a shit. The dude should not be running the offense.
But that's not what's going to happen.
2 out of the 3 years he's been the Knicks, it's been a disaster.
Tibbs will put a preference on Randle over Barrett. Look at me. Like, you can't look at me and not agree with that.
I don't know. The front office is intervening. I mean, look at the moves they made this offseason so far. They are prioritizing development.
They traded for Cam Reddish, and then Tibbs refused to play him. They were like, play him. And he was like, nope.
Great, fine. But that means Tibbs has to go too. I do not care. Randle is not going to be on this team. His 4-year extension starts this season. He will not finish that extension on this team. So it doesn't matter. Like, that's how I look at this. At some point, My goal for him is improve enough that teams look at you as a net neutral contract and we will ship you the hell off. Because OB ultimately needs to play more anyway. So that's realistically the way I look at it.
There's a lot of guys on that roster who should play more. I think there's a we've gotten into a little bit of a Knicks rant here, but I think that the biggest problem with the Knicks right now is there's the owner and the coach, and they kind of have the same alignment. Let's play the vets. Let's win some games, maybe make the playoffs. That makes money. And then there's the front office who's like, here's what we have on our roster, and we want to complement what we have on the roster, right? If the front office, I feel, is a little bit like, here we have RJ Barrett. Let's kind of cater the roster to RJ Barrett a little bit. They trade for his friend in Cam Reddish, who fits well next to RJ. And then Thibs won't play him.
So, no, I don't
feel everybody's on the same page there. I think trading for Donovan Mitchell is a terrible idea, especially now that we have Jalen Brunson.
I do think James Dolan is way more aligned with the front office than we realize. When is the last time we've really heard from him? Like, the guy
haven't heard from him, and that's good.
Right, but that's my point. I think he is trusting what the front office is doing, and I think their message, which they've generally kept close to the vest, is really just absolutely appeasing him, and he's going with it, which is huge because I see the direction they're in. Like, even if you trade for Mitchell, you are still committing to a younger roster. You, in trading for him, are opening up minutes for more players, like more younger players, because realistically, you're going to have to get rid of Fournier. At some point, you're going to get rid of Randall because, let's face it, the two of them are not complementary pieces. So I think you move some of this stuff around, and I think it works. It makes sense. The question is, how many picks are you giving up? And if any, how many young players are you giving up? I think it makes sense to give up a Quentin Grimes because realistically, he's playing the same position as Mitchell, who you're committing to long-term. I think keeping Quickly and Obi makes the most sense, and you get rid of all the rest of the young guys. You get rid of...
I don't believe that Randall will get moved at any point. His contract will expire.
4 years? Absolutely not.
The problem is if we trade for Donovan Mitchell, we have to get rid of Randall right now. Otherwise, RJ Barrett is done. His career is effectively over.
I wouldn't say that. I think that's
there are three people ahead of him in the depth chart.
I think there's one. I think the only person ahead of RJ. Look at the end of last season. RJ was running the offense. Like, I still think
because Randall gave up. There was rumors that Randall wanted to get traded. Randall was done, and Tibbs was like, "Whatever, fine."
And has that
Randall
changed?
wasn't going to do it
necessarily. But that's why I look at it and I say, if you bring in Mitchell is clearly the top dog on offense. Then it's RJ. Then it's RJ and Brunson kind of in tandem, just because Brunson's a point guard. But like I
don't know.
I also think it allows RJ. RJ was so great at defense to start the year. Then he took on a much larger offensive role as the season progressed and declined on that side of the ball. So I actually think there is significant payoff for bringing in another star because you can let RJ dominate one side of the ball and then be a complementary piece on offense. And I think it really works. He doesn't have to be the driving force of an offense. Meanwhile, he can go for 30 any given night. We've seen it. Like, he has that potential night to night. But if he comes out and starts averaging 22 points a game, and is great on defense, that's perfect. That literally, I couldn't imagine a better scenario for the Knicks this season.
Unless Julius Randle's taking 5 shots a game, I don't see it happening.
But that's the thing. I think of other teams that realistically would be interested in Randle. Why wouldn't a team like the Hornets, who obviously just lost Miles Bridges, why would they not be interested in him? There are teams that would want him. Why Portland, for example? Why would they not be interested in him?
What do you trade for Randle if you're the Hornets?
Literally, I can't equate what that trade would be, but the Knicks don't need salary back. That's not what they're necessarily looking for.
We don't need salary back, but the Hornets have no motivation.
Contract. We'll take a bad contract from you. I don't care. We'll take one and bench him. It doesn't matter. That's how I look at it. And so I say, I think that is the one that makes the most sense in the wake of the Miles Bridges news. And I think there are other teams that might be interested. Let's face it, 20-10-5 doesn't grow on trees, and Randle does that. Sure, 2 out of 3 years he's done it for the Knicks. It's been inefficient, but I think that's still valuable to some teams. Right now, because of the presence of Obi Toppin, it doesn't make sense on the Knicks.
It doesn't make sense on the Knicks. It never made sense on the Knicks.
It did.
It was a signing because 2 years ago because we were so garbage. We needed anybody to be good.
They were the 4 seed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We were the 4 seed.
And we lost
we lost to 5 with the Hawks, a very young Hawks that did not look good this year. So I think I've expressed this over the past 2 years. Never really. I don't like Randle. I'm a huge RJ Barrett guy. I want RJ Barrett to be the king of New York. I understand this whole hype around Donovan Mitchell. I'd be very happy acquiring Donovan Mitchell if Jalen Brunson had stayed with the Mavericks. Would have been like, oh, we need a guard, to kind of complement RJ.
See,
and
I
RJ
think
can just
I do agree with that. I don't love the Brunson Mitchell fit. That said, I don't overly care because I don't think, and especially on his decreasing salary, the way they set it up, where he's making all the money up front and then it progresses off. That's a very tradable player down the road.
100% tradable. But if I want to make the playoffs and I want to compete in the playoffs, I need big, long, strong players.
But they're not winning the championship this year anyway. Like, that's the thing.
I want to go to the playoffs.
Fine for now. It is fine for now having the two.
I want to win a playoff series.
But are you telling me that a team of, let's say for argument's sake, I get my way and they don't give up that much to, if you have a team of, and depending on whether or not Derrick Rose gets traded, for argument's sake, in this scenario, I am keeping him. We say Jalen Brunson starting 1, Donovan Mitchell at the 2, RJ at the 3. Whether Randall's there or not, let's say Randall's there at the 4 and Mitchell Robinson at the 5, starting lineup. Then your bench is Derrick Rose, Emmanuel Quickley, a 3 that you sign now in the secondary free agent market, Obi Toppin and Isaiah Hartenstein. Is that team not at least like the 7 in the play-in?
It's a good team. On paper, it's a great team. You have a lot of guys who can score 20 points a game, but in practice, does it work?
I don't know.
That's my issue.
I think that team is very solid, and I think that's a perfect framework for your future. As long as you don't give up too much in that trade pick-wise, that is so appealing. How, if you're a free agent, are you not like, I want to go play in New York with this awesome young core that's fun? Like, to me, that is so much more intriguing than not having Donovan Mitchell in the fold.
I think if Donovan Mitchell's in New York, it definitely makes it a more attractive free agent market. But what type of free agents are you going to attract? Is it the LeBrons? Is it the Kawhis? Is it the Zions, right? Or is it like Evan Fournier?
You're looking at that 2025 free agent class that's loaded. That's what you're eyeing. Or next offseason, LeBron opts out and we take LeBron. I'm kidding. But
never. But happen.
Also, why would LeBron not want to come play with that? It's better than the shitstorm that the Lakers have. Literally, it would be a more appealing free agent destination than what the Lakers have going on. But I digress.
I mean, looking at the free agent class in 2025, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Rudy Gobert. Okay, it's a 35-year-old Paul George, a 34-year-old Kawhi Leonard, Rudy Gobert, a 32-year-old Anthony Davis, a 29-year-old Ben Simmons, a 35-year-old Drew Holiday, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, but I would be so shocked if Jason Tatum didn't go back to the Celtics. The biggest free agent on this list is going to be Brandon Ingram.
Okay, and that would be a good fit, especially if he improves.
I think he's a great player. I think he could be the best player on a championship team. He's got the length. He's got the size. I think if he was more aggressive, like we saw in the playoffs, he played really well. They had a good team. I think they were a little overmatched against the number 1 seed Suns, but they brought it to 6. So
yeah, but again, my point being, I just think it becomes at some point it's a more desired destination. Being there,
going to come Lonzo Ball, Tim Hardaway Jr.
Yeah, just bring Tim Hardaway back again.
The
match made in heaven. No, but I do. I just think it. You need to make yourself appealing for that star to come in the offseason. And usually, in theory, the way it goes is you have your star, then you trade for the other. This could actually work the other way around, where you are trading for a young, good star, pairing him with someone who I believe could be an all-star next season in RJ Barrett. And then the goal is that is intriguing enough for whenever one more star says, hey, I want to come here, he walks and comes. Like, that's perfect. So you do set yourself up for that scenario. Is it a guarantee? Absolutely not. But especially if you also don't give up too much of your trade chips right now, maybe you do have a second trade in you as time passes. So that's why I just think it makes sense to make a move now, as long as it's not too expensive. So I do. I think you're making your first step towards contention in doing that. Because on the path you're on right now, sure, you'll get there, but it might be 5-6 years from now. Trading for Mitchell makes it like a 3-year plan.
I'll leave it at this. I am a massive hater, and I understand how big of a hater I am. I don't know if I'd be happy with the Knicks if Donovan Mitchell became a Knick.
My friend just sent me a link, so this is pretty applicable for us talking. Lakers, Knicks could explore Julius Randle trade. And my other friend texted, "I'm down to trade Julius for Westbrook," and then just tell him to sit out. LOL. Which, like, yeah. Again, if it meant getting Randle off the roster and maybe another pick to facilitate the Mitchell trade, like, yeah, I'm on board for that. Like, there are so many ways that I think this team could get better. And I do think Randle is desired other places if he's not in that primary role, which is why there's also part of me that says, fine, Jazz want to sit on this Donovan Mitchell trade into the season, which would be, excuse my French, fucking stupid. Like, you give yourself time for Randle to repair his image. If playing next to Brunson and not having to dominate the ball as much, and maybe RJ is more integral on offense, he could repair his image a little bit.
If Julius Randle could show me that he could be a productive third option big forward, I would take him. But as of right now, he has not proven that. He wants the ball in his hands. He drives into the paint. He chucks up a really contested shot. I don't know if Julius Randle turns into like a high possession, like a fast paced 3-and-D forward, I would take him. And he shot the ball well at certain points, but mostly as a center when, Joel Embiid's not going to step all the way out to the 3-point line to guard Randle.
But I also, I think
Sadiq Bey will.
I'm not saying he's perfect. I don't think that contract's that bad. Like, it's not like he's making $30 million. So, like,
no,
but that's why I think teams would want him. And I just think there are ways to facilitate moving him where you progress yourself forward. And so I think the first step of that is getting Donovan Mitchell. I think he would be the perfect fit next to RJ Barrett. I really do. Because RJ, as good as he is on offense, he isn't that dynamic of a scorer. He's more of like a facility. Like, he is best driving, kicking, and like,
he's a wing.
Spot up things.
He's
like,
a wing forward.
That's him at his best. It's not like he's in like this big layup package mid-range game. He's pretty inefficient in the paint. He's good at getting there, and he's going to get better at getting to the line. But he needs that extra guy who can go create off the dribble. And so I think that's perfect.
I thought that's why we brought in Brunson.
All right, fine. You trade Brunson down the line. It's not like Brunson is this differentiator. Brunson's perfect next to stars. Look at what he did with Luka. He is a great compliment.
100%. And our star is RJ Barrett.
Or you put him next to two good guys. Luke, I'm not disagreeing with you. I love RJ, and I do think he has potential to be an all-star as early as this season. But
he does too. I think he was an all-star last season.
Fine. Be that as it may, I'm just saying I don't think there's any harm in pairing these two together. I think it makes a ton of sense. And so I do. I think there are teams that are going to be hungry enough to go get Julius Randle, let Obi play more. That's why I think, like, and I'm going to use this. I almost want to parlay this into talking about the summer league, but you look at some of the Knicks talent, young talent. I don't know why the Jazz wouldn't be interested in a lot of these guys. It sounds like they are most interested in Quentin Grimes, who, if you're trading for Donovan Mitchell, like, he's going to be buried on the bench anyway for as long as you have Donovan Mitchell, because they play the same position. And let's face it, as much as I like Grimes and he made first team all summer league, like, he is not as good as Donovan Mitchell, and I doubt he will be at any point in his career. So that said, he's a perfect trade piece. And I think a lot of teams would love to have a guy like that, especially on a younger team. Like, that is like, you're giving him flexibility to grow. Like, I just think it makes more sense. So you look at him, you look at a Deuce McBride who could go play on a young growing team. McBride has shown plenty of promise. Obviously you would probably trade Cam Reddish in this deal as well. Fine. The Knicks don't need him on this depth chart. So, like, then you trade Fournier, and then you trade some picks. Like, I just think there are ways to facilitate this to make it work, that the Knicks preserve their young core and future flexibility, and the Jazz get what they want in plenty of picks and young players. So, like, I really do think that it is a match made in heaven. I think right now what the Jazz are doing, they had their conversation with the Knicks, but the Knicks said almost exactly that. And now they're going to other teams to see if they can get similar or equal value. They can't. We know they can't. We've looked at every other team right now, and unless the Thunder are going to trade for Donovan Mitchell, which makes no sense in hell, like, it's not happening. The Pelicans aren't doing it. They just traded for CJ McCollum. Like, it's not, there is no situation where it makes sense outside of New York and Miami cannot do it. There's my rant.
What happens if Chet Holmgren makes a huge impact in OKC?
But that's the thing. There's not time for that. They have to trade Mitchell before the start of the season. They do. Or else say goodbye to Victor. Say goodbye to Victor. Like,
yeah,
it just doesn't make sense to hold on to him. What are you holding on to him for?
Imagine if OKC had the number 1 pick next year. Chet and Victor and Pokuševski.
It would be electric. I'd love to see that lineup.
They'd play all 3 of them at the same time.
Yeah, but I mean, just for fun, I think they would have to roll.
No, I think that'd be a real. I think that'd be a real lineup. Shea, you'd have Giddey, Shea, and then Poku, Chet, Victor. Length,
honestly,
all
it's kind of
length
fun.
Team.
The
shortest player on that starting lineup is Shea, who's like 6'5", 6'6".
Except I feel like the Poku experiment is failing. I feel like anytime he gets a shot, it's just not working. But he is still so young.
They give him so many chances, and he's so inconsistent.
No, I do though. I think it's. I genuinely think the Knicks make the most sense. So we'll see what happens. Like I guess we don't really necessarily know what's going to come out in the next few weeks. It sounds like this could drag out. It's not like something that has to happen overnight, but there is that long-term clock of looking at the end of the summer, start of training camp, where you're like, all right, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing in Utah? You know, so that's how I look at it. I think something will get done in the next few weeks.
How much summer league did you watch?
Good amount. Watched a good amount of summer league. Did not watch the Knicks championship. Were good. Yeah, I mean the Knicks were good, but I didn't watch the championship. I watched for players. So like I didn't watch full games. I'd watch like first half here or there just to like see what guys looked like. But I did like I was again not to just make this a Knicks heavy episode, but very encouraged by their young talent, and so that's what's reinforcing my thought of it makes sense to trade with the Jazz because they did. I mean they made it to the final. First year they were giving out summer league rings, and it was really like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. They were going to get trolled for celebrating the summer league rings, but also get trolled if they lost in the championship. So like there was no hope there. But I thought it was I love summer league. I always do. I think it's very fun to evaluate this young talent or talent that like is trying to crack their way in. Portland was interesting. I mean, they essentially got to the championship without Shaedon Sharpe, which. Again, I mean, you probably feel vindicated about him, like getting hurt right off the bat. But
yeah, I mean, they were like, he started playing. I was like, ugh. He hit one really nice shot. It was like a turnaround, fading baseline mid-range jumper, and I was like, oh. But it wasn't like I saw him make any like fabulous decisions. It wasn't like I was impressed by the way he fit within the flow of the offense or anything like that. And then like immediately they were like, he's injured. My roommate claims that he pulled something in game when he was on the court. And he's like, no, I saw him get injured. I was like, did you?
Yeah.
So,
well, I think that's the issue is that we didn't have enough time to really evaluate him. And even as much as that is, I mean, teams play 5 games in summer league. Like even that is not enough time to really evaluate talent. But like you can kind of
get a nod. He hasn't played basketball in a whole year. I don't know who he is. The only thing I know about him is that everybody had him high on his draft board, and he got drafted 7th overall, which in my opinion is a mistake because we don't know who he is. He hasn't played. Like
I don't know that it was a transition mistake so much as it didn't make sense for Portland specifically. Like, I do think that there is upside there. There was a reason he was so highly touted coming out of high school.
He's the number one recruit out of high school, according to ESPN. And obviously that means something, but you're the number one player out of high school playing high school basketball, and then you go play college where everybody's good, especially if you're playing out of Kentucky where everybody you play is a top 500 recruit.
That development is pivotal.
Right. There's a speed, right? And you want to ramp up the speed. You can't just go from high school to NBA really quick, right? You see guys like Mitchell Robinson, who didn't play in college, and he has trouble with fouling because he doesn't understand the speed of an NBA game yet. It takes you time to develop the IQ to play in high school. It takes you time to develop in college. It takes you time to develop into the pros. So the fact that he never got 1 year of playing college basketball, real college games, not just practice, I think hurts you, especially if you're the Portland Trailblazers and you said, we want to win right now with Damian Lillard. Right. And then you draft a guy who's going to need 4 or 5 years to, be a
So the reason I think it
starter.
kind of makes sense for them is, let's say he starts the season and looks awesome, like really looks great, like truly like first team all rookie, looks like a guy that young teams might want to trade for. Maybe then you're in the market to trade him for another piece. Like I think it is potentially an advantageous risk that they took.
Boom or
on there.
bust.
Yeah, but like realistically, that's kind of how I look at this. I'm not saying I sign off on it. It's not like this would have been my preferred option for them, but I kind of get it. I do like a little. I don't know. Like it's definitely not my favorite thing. But I'm not out on Portland taking it as much as you are.
I'm very out on it. I don't think anybody should have taken him within the lottery. And that's like, I don't think we should be rewarding players for purposefully sitting out. I think it says a lot about his mindset where like this is a business, but that's not kind of what I want to bring into the locker room, especially because you kind of see it with Brooklyn where their two top players were like, yeah, this is just a job to me. No, you want guys who come in and like, I love playing basketball. I want to be here. I want to be on the court. I want to make an impact. Right. Those are the types of guys I draft in the lottery. And then after that, I can say like, okay, maybe this guy isn't perfect, or maybe he'll never develop into a diamond. But you can at least be confident in them. I have no confidence in this kid being like a productive person in my locker room. I agree with you that he's a great basketball player, but everybody in the NBA level is a great basketball player. So
right. Also, not to circle back on this, but I'm just seeing more stuff pop up. Apparently, Mark Stein is reporting about that Westbrook Randall swap. Sounds like it could happen if the Lakers are unable to trade for Kyrie, which who the hell knows what's going on there, and if the Knicks are able to get Donovan Mitchell, which I think makes sense on both fronts. Like I think them trying to get off of long-term salary in Randall and bringing in an expiring deal, I think that makes perfect sense. And if you get extra draft capital back to take on Westbrook, I think it makes perfect sense. So beside the point, but I think there is a little more fire here than just me getting a text from a friend. I'm now seeing these reports come out.
Yeah, I don't know. I even think it's worse if the Knicks acquire Westbrook. It's got to be
it's ugly.
Trade and cut. You got to waive him because then
that's so much.
There's no space for him.
That is so much money, though.
Just pay it, buy it out. Then
I don't want to stretch it. I see no value in stretching that contract.
You have to if he's playing minutes for the New York Knicks, I will be very disappointed.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would hate that.
Do like a Melo thing, trade for him, and then like immediately buy him out. He was a Knick for like 15 minutes.
I know, but there's no way he's leaving money on the table.
Other summer league.
Let's get back to that.
Sorry, yeah.
Well, Keegan Murray won summer league MVP. To your chagrin.
I'm not surprised by that at all. I think he's a very complete player. Watching him at Iowa, he was always a good scorer. He could do it from all levels and a handful of different ways.
Sounds to me like he can go out there and get you a bucket. I know we fought about this last week.
He's Cam Johnson. That's like
I think he's better than Cam Johnson.
The difference between him and Cam Johnson was that he was the only good player on a pretty solid Iowa team. And didn't they lose in the first round of the tournament? And that shows the.
I had that Iowa team going to the Final Four, and they lost in the first round of the tournament.
Yeah, and I think that's because a lot of people saw this Iowa team who played well in Big Ten Conference because Keegan Murray out hustles everybody, which in like the Big Ten works. We had Caleb Swanigan, and then we got bounced in the first round. Caleb Swanigan was like second in Player of the Year voting.
Right.
So, I think he's very good. I really think the difference between him and Cam Johnson was that when Cam Johnson was at UNC, they had a lot of guys. Cam Johnson was kind of like an off-screen shooter, wing type player who I think Cam Johnson, he averaged like 20 points per game in UNC his last year. So
I think Keegan Murray is far more dynamic than Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson's a role player. Keegan Murray can be I think he can ultimately become an all-star.
He's going to start playing NBA minutes and you're going to be like, oh, playing in the summer league, you can see that he's a man amongst boys, but once he gets in the big leagues with some, I think Harrison Barnes is going to be who are you?
I'm
Like,
not
there's
saying
going to be
I'm
no
not
competition.
saying as a rookie he's going to be like that. I'm saying over time. We're just talking about how you need to develop over time.
Okay, Cam Johnson and Keegan Murray's upside potential is a Harrison Barnes.
No, also like that's not that bad. Harrison Barnes like is good, ish.
Yeah, he's good.
He's good, not relative to his
paid.
contract, but yeah, like I think Cam Johnson, that is his ceiling. I think Keegan Murray is better than that.
Where do you think Keegan Murray could go?
The problem is his play style is so different. Like I feel like it's hard to really pinpoint like a true comparison, but like
he's a shooter. He's a movement shooter.
The problem is his length is what skews me on a comparison because he is like a bigger player. And like, obviously what comes to mind when you think of like longer, bigger players, your head intuitively goes Kevin Durant, which is not where his ceiling is. He's much lower than that. But like, he is that kind of player, just worse. So like, I don't know what the comparison necessarily is.
He has a well polished game. I don't think he has any weak spots in his game. Can I say
somewhere in between like Andrew Wiggins and Kevin Durant? Like at a ceiling.
He's not. I think he's athletic. He gets up. He can dunk. Very strong. He's not the quickest player in the world. I've seen him rip down rebounds and run down the court. His handle is good, but not polished. He's not going to break anybody's ankles. Pascal Siakam might be a good comparison.
A little less physical, but yeah.
Maybe. No, I'd say they're about the same. I mean, when you look at Keegan Murray's highlights in college, he's a post-up player, and the reason why he scored 27 points a game was because he would throw up like a hook shot, and he would miss, and then he would grab the offensive rebound, and he would put it back up like right away. He's bigger and stronger than a lot of other guys, especially at his position.
It goes away in the NBA, especially as a rookie.
So, I think he's a good movement shooter. They're going to run him around a lot of screens. He's going to create a lot of space for some of the other guys on that team. And I think he's a good fit with what they have, but I don't think he'll ever develop into an all-star, maybe a one-time all-star. That's the...
Yeah. Maybe. Look, I'm not saying it's set in stone. I just, based on what I've seen, which again is a few games of summer league basketball, I'm impressed.
We'll get a Jalen Brunson type contract.
Me looking at them taking him over Jaden Ivey, I am not as like upset by it anymore.
Jaden Ivey was also another one of the players where watching him in summer league, I was like, okay, this is exactly what I expected from him. He's very confident in almost an arrogant type way.
Yeah.
His decision making is questionable at times. But I think if you run well-built plays for him and you give him time, he can be successful.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of is that not the timeline?
It is the timeline for them.
Right.
He has all the time and space in the world.
Right,
Cade's going to be a great fit. But yeah, hey, I think 4 and 5 were good fits. And looking at some of the other guys, obviously Paolo got shut down early after looking really impressive. Chet played a couple of really impressive games. Obviously, has some problems with his strength. But we kind of knew that coming in, right? You knew he was going to get bullied a little bit. And that's just kind of the process of being in the NBA. He's going to have to figure out how to compete with, guys like Embiid, which he's going to get bodied by. And Jabari Smith, I thought looked good. I don't think he looked great. I think his jump shot's a little flat, a little hard.
I feel like none of those top guys other than Paolo was I like, wow, okay. Like, I think this is it. Like, I think there were clear flaws in Chet's game, in Jabari Smith's game. Paolo was the only one where I was like definitively like, okay, like I think this guy is going to be a multi-time all-star. The rest of them, like I wouldn't be I wouldn't be surprised if it went either way. I could see some of them like being perennial all-stars and others like very, and at the same time, not like being very bad. So
I think Jabari Smith's going to have the hardest career out of all of them. Obviously a high level contender and wants to be great, but I think Chet could easily be good with something as simple as like a position change. Okay, we don't want Chet guarding Embiid anymore.
He also
and you move him to forward.
Like literally just put on weight, and he will because he's only 19. Like put on weight. You will get better if you get bigger and stronger. Because his skill set is already there. Literally the only knock I have on him is his physicality, and so that's why I just hit the weight room, kid. NBA trainers with you, like he'll be fine. He just needs that. He's got to show he's willing to do it and willing to get bigger. But until that point,
it's like Evan Mobley.
but weaker. He can be, if he can be as physically, like even just like an Evan Mobley, like you don't have to be much bigger than him.
He's definitely a little more finesse than Evan Mobley.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like if you could get that, if you could get that level of, I don't know, I don't want to say like fat on your bones, but like he is much skinnier and frailer than Evan Mobley. So like if you could just somehow,
he's a little longer.
Right, fine. Doesn't matter when you're getting back down in the post.
Yeah, that's going to be a marquee matchup. I would love to see an Evan Mobley, Chet Holmgren matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a fair goal for Chet to put on that amount of weight to better compete in the NBA.
Oh, speaking of the Rockets, Tari, you say he made first team all summer league. I thought he looked really good when I watched him play. I was like, wow, he's better than Jabari Smith right now. So
yeah, but I also think it's easier. I feel like it's easier for smaller players coming into the league to like, especially in summer league, to go in and be a little more dynamic with the ball. So like,
yeah, the pressure is on Jabari Smith.
Yes, I agree. That's how I felt.
Which, hey, I thought a lot of the Warriors guys looked pretty good. I was happy to see James Wiseman getting some highlights that I saw.
Wiseman, Kuminga, Moody, like I think all those guys playing and just getting a little more time. Because let's face it, if the Warriors, I know they're like obviously in that rumor mill of Kevin Durant teams that could trade. Like,
sure.
I also think if you don't go that way and you do keep these young players, like you want to develop them in Warriors systems, and like I think all of them can fit that mold perfectly. So like it is an interesting like. You're going to see like that. I feel like it's like that Ninja Turtle meme where like it's like the changing of the guard kind of, but we could easily see that in Golden State, and like they could really just have this like perennial winner with those guys.
They could. I think the Warriors are in a good position. Obviously, they reloaded in last year's draft.
Yeah,
2 years ago. I don't remember. I mean, they had two drafts now, right? They
got Wiseman, they got Moody, they got Kuminga. Like they've gotten plenty of good young players. So. They've done well in the draft. A lot of that does help when you have Steph and Clay get hurt and Draymond not play, so you get the second overall pick. But like, yeah,
right. And then they had what, like Moody got drafted 14th, and they had someone else's pick that they drafted. They had the Timberwolves pick,
right?
And trading.
That's how, I mean that right, exactly. So they have. I mean, they've made good moves, and like I think that they're like in a similar spot to. Again, not that everything's coming back to the Knicks where you have a good young core. The thing is, the other thing that they have going for them, the Knicks don't have, is that their current team is great too. So like the Warriors, I actually think are in one of the best positions that an NBA team could possibly be in right now. Like for just looking at current and long-term success, I don't think anyone is in a better spot than them.
I relate it back to when the Spurs had
the Admiral and then going to Duncan.
It
feels just like that.
So the Curry era will end, and then you'll see some of these younger guys step up. I think Kuminga has a huge upside. Wiseman didn't look as good as I thought he should look, but
it feels just
he'll be
like
a good
that.
NBA player.
I think that's like the perfect way to look at this.
Trey Murphy of the Pelicans, he had one game that I watched. He shot like 90% from three. But he was just chucking.
Yeah. And also just like the problem with the Pelicans too is like not many young guys are going to crack the roster now, especially that they had last year's young guys look so good. Like I feel like their roster spots are pretty much set in stone at this point. Like there isn't that
one of the guys on the roster last year. Him and Herb Jones were the two guys who got big minutes. They were both rookies last year.
But I just think too, as like, especially when Zion comes back, like I think that their rotation is going to look slightly different than last year, especially with some of the different combinations. Like realistically, you're going to stagger the way you play McCollum, Ingram, and Zion. Like they're going to have some weird rotations in there, so I don't feel like there are big minutes for those younger guys necessarily.
The biggest question for the Pelicans will be how does Valanciunas and Zion fit on the floor together? If you run a Valanciunas Zion lineup and Zion's still struggling to shoot threes a little bit, I think that'll be a big question to answer.
Yeah, I mean Valanciunas can also space the floor a little bit more, so like you can give Zion a little more leeway.
I think both of them can shoot. It's just like if both of them were on the floor together, do I still have the same spacing? Are people respecting both of their jump shots the same way if I ran, like, you know, if I had Herb in the corner versus Zion, or I had Herb in the corner versus Valanciunas, like, are people respecting that? Or so it's just interesting to think about. This
is also like potentially a dumb question, but like, how many threes has Zion even attempted in his career? Like, I know that's like right. Like, I think it is a little ridiculous for me to ask that question, but like, I don't think he's attempted. I'm trying to now go on to Basketball Reference and see.
He's attempted 48
48 in his career. That's it. Like, that is such a small sample size. I can't even look into whether or not he'd be good at shooting NBA threes.
Yeah, I mean, he shoots about 1 a game, which is fine, you know? So I think at first Zion's going to have to play a lot of center.
He also did hit, like, I mean, of the 48 that he's, or the 16 that he's made of his 48 attempted, he made like 4 of them in the first game he played. So, like, it is a little ridiculous. He just doesn't shoot them, nor does he really have to. I mean, he's a bulldozer. He gets to the rim against anyone. I don't care who's in front of him.
So easy for him.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see Zion come back.
I'm so happy he's coming back. I'm so excited. I mean, Summer League was like a good little teaser, but I can't wait for the regular season to start up again. It's just the
can't wait for preseason. I just want to see some of the real guys get out there. All this Drew League hype. People, okay, so LeBron went and played in Drew League and scored like 42.
Yeah.
THT went to go play in Drew League.
And scored 13.
And people were like, bro, dude is still mid in Drew League.
The thing that I found very interesting about everything that happened with the Drew League over the weekend was, and I really do, like, I hate that everything keeps coming back to this, but like Kyrie was supposed to play and didn't show. Like,
yeah, people have been
how is anyone going to trade for him confidently? How are the Nets going to bring him back confidently?
He was supposed to go play at Drew League, and then everybody's defending him like, oh, but he was actually at Phil Hardy's camp coaching young women, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, but he had said he was going to play at Drew League.
Don't make dual commitments if you can't get to both.
If you knew you were going to be
he's so unreliable.
It's not that – it would be one thing if he was like, okay, I'll come play in Drew League, and then he didn't show, and he was just absent. I'd be more okay with that than the fact that he committed to go play in Drew League, kind of knowing that he wouldn't be there. Or he committed to Drew League and then was like, you know what, Phil, I would love to come play at your camp.
Right.
You know, like, you can't do that.
You can't have your cake and eat it too. Yeah. And that's kind of, it just feels like he does whatever he wants. Like, he does not care what it means for anyone else around him. And I think that's exactly why we're in the situation we're currently in. So it just is very funny to me looking at that Drew League situation. Like, I think that is really, to me, just like, that's the cherry on top of it all. And so I don't know. Like, I think it's going to be interesting to monitor the Nets, specifically Kyrie. And obviously, you know, I think they're not going to do anything with him until they have a clearer picture with Durant. But something's got to give. I do not think there's a long-term solution with the Nets and Kyrie. And I think that just reinforces. I think that Drew League performance reinforces that. No one can trust him. The Nets are fed up with it, and they're going to realistically, I'm going to guess, by the deadline, try and find a move for him. So,
yeah.
Because, I mean, there's no long-term future between the two of them. There's not.
My last comments, yeah,
we've been on for a while.
I don't think Kyrie's going to be long-term anywhere.
No, that's fair.
My last comments about Summer League would be, I thought the Heat drafted well, drafting Nikola Jovic. I think he played very well. I've seen a lot of highlights from him. Ochai Agbaji, drafted by the Cavs, I thought was also
looked very good.
And I thought the Spurs guys didn't necessarily look good, but I think the Spurs made the right picks at the right places.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think you were making very similar observations that I am making. So, and again, I don't want to overreact to Summer League because I think that is very, very unfair considering we've seen such swings. We've seen Ben Simmons literally look like the best player of all time. Kevin Knox looked like Magic Johnson. Like, we've just seen it. A lot of it.
It's just a warm up. Some of these guys don't come out and really play. You know, some of these guys are looking for roster spots. Some of these guys just have like a couple hot games. Right. So, I mean, anything can happen from this point on. It's just like taking in the little bit that I have seen and just kind of saying like, you know, this looks good. This didn't look good.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, everything changes. Also, Kenneth Lofton Jr. I know we saw those videos of him beating up on Chet, but I love him. I've been a big fan of him since I've been like a year now. He's just fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean,
he gets buckets on everybody.
We were just talking about how we like Zion doing it. It's fun to have a bulldozer like that. And it was very fun watching it against a guy who absolutely cannot withstand a bulldozer. So
he's a lot like Zion, but he has no vert.
Right.
He can dunk. Obviously, he's like
Eddie Curry,
but
he's just
He's not.
just
he's got
big
the Zion
guys
body.
Absolutely throwing their body at people, and it works. Is
And he
essentially
pulls up
what
from
the strategy
three.
is. Yeah.
They give
Right.
him
He's
the
a
ball,
modern
like
Eddie
point guard,
Curry.
and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, he's gonna drive it right on me, and then pops one over the top, and you're like, ooh. So always fun to watch.
Yeah. But all right, Luke, we have been on for a little while now, so let's cut our listeners. Let's cut them loose here. Hopefully, by this time next week, we have some movement on the free agent front because I'm tired of everything being stalled. I want to see the secondary market start to go. Maybe sprinkle in a couple trades here or there, but for now, pretty happy with the movement we've gotten. And yeah, I don't know if you have any other parting takes. If not, we'll sign this bad boy off and hope for next week.
Yeah, no, let's get it next week.
All righty. Well, to everyone who's made it this far, thank you for tuning in. This is the Hoop True Podcast, and join us next time.